Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go.
Welcome back, guys. We are back with another phenomenal female first responder. I am so pumped about this one. We are joined today by Erin Nugent, who is a master certified life coach. She's a former Victoria police officer, not from Victoria, BC, Canada, but from Victoria Police in Australia. Hello, multi-international podcast going on here. Erin was also a detective in the Armed Crime Squad and is now living in Boston with her husband, who is a firefighter. As a first responder spouse, Erin has really turned her attention and her awareness to helping first responders bridge between peer support and clinical services, trying to cut through any of the resistance of that to that kind of help in our community that's usually made difficult because of the stigma attached and the cultural overall of first responders. So thank you so much for joining me today, Erin. I'm super pumped to have you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Nikki. How are you?
I'm so good. Like I said, I've been really excited about this, and it took a while for us to coordinate our schedules between time changes and just lives. You're a busy mom. Believe me, I feel you. I know that exactly.
Exactly.
So I'm so excited to have you. And again, super excited. So you reached out to me through Instagram. Was it Instagram or was it LinkedIn?
No, I think I emailed you actually.
Oh, see, well, there you go. Look at all these modes of communication that we have in this world. I thought it was so cool when I saw what you did. I took a look at, your website and seeing all the things that you're doing. I think it's a perfect fit for, and obviously the females that we reach out to, but all of our first responder communities, and kind of showing that, there is other things out there that can help them beyond the kind of typical help that we think of when we think of first responders with their mental health. But I do also, because I just am so curious, I've always, Australia is on my bucket list. I have literally always wanted to go there since I was a little kid. My favorite animal.
I hear that a lot.
My favorite animal is a koala. I want to go and cuddle the koalas. That's what I want to do. And I've just never had a chance to make it there. So I would love to hear your journey through law enforcement in Australia, your move to the States, and then kind of fill me in on what you're doing now with your life. I'm just so excited. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you go and talk away.
That's all right. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing with the podcast and in the space you're in for first responders and especially females in that field. So I'm really, really enjoying it. But obviously, I'm Australian and that's where I grew up. I lived in Victoria, which is one of the bottom states down there. And from just after high school, I think I was about 19 and I decided that I wanted to be a cop, but I felt like I was too young. And so I thought if I still want to do it in 2 years, I'll be 21, so I just worked 2 jobs, had fun, partied, all that kind of fun stuff you do as a young adult. And then I kind of went, all right, so I feel like I'm ready, and went through the application process. So I was accepted by Victoria Police after going through all of the process, which is entrance exam, you have to do a physical test, psych test, medical, and then it ends with a panel interview where they grill you for an hour and ask you a whole bunch of questions and all that sort of stuff. And then you went on a merit system. So you just kind of got ranked against all the other applicants. So I think the whole process probably took sort of 6 to 12 months, all up. But I got in, I think, maybe 3 months after I sort of completed everything, which was pretty quick at that stage. So I went into the academy in October 2006, and at that stage we had, I think it was our first female commissioner. So they had the squad very equal. So it was typically, male to female ratios. We had about 20 members in my squad. And so back then, it's all changed a lot now. But back then, you would go in and spend 5 months at the academy learning all the law and your powers in terms of arrest powers and and all that terminology and stuff, and learning defensive tactics and how to handcuff appropriately and all that kind of thing. So you would spend 5 months at the academy doing that, and then you graduate, and then you would have the next 2 years as a probationary cop. So you got matched to a station, you spend your 2 years there, and then you also have to do like the portfolio of work. And then at the end of that 2.5 years, you got a diploma in public safety and policing, and you went back to the academy intermittently to learn more law. And so from there, I moved after that first couple of years. Went to like a busier station. I had some really good mentors at that first training station who taught me a lot, and they tended to be more on like the criminal investigative side. So when I went to a new station, I had like, a certain amount of experience in regards to that. So I was able to get temporary duty opportunities, and sort of, I guess, showed my level of experience and attentiveness and really wanting to, I guess, prove myself. And as a female first responder, you tend to be in that aspect where you kind of have to prove yourself amongst the boys. Yeah. So I had like a few different opportunities. Like I worked on what's called the Burg Crew, where you investigate burglaries with the CIU, which was like the detective criminal branch. I did temps at the DRU, the Divisional Response Unit, which was 12 months of plainclothes work. We do a lot of drug investigations, all that kind of stuff. And what else? And then so I back and forth between there and uniform, and you'd have to do your dues in uniform before you got, any other opportunities. And then you had to get your field investigator qualification. You did your field investigator course, and then that allowed you to put in to do temps as a detective. So I did 6 months in the crime department at the drug task force. So that was sort of higher level drug investigations, normally larger quantities, syndicate. So I spent probably almost like a good 18 months of my life, pulling apart crop houses and reeking like marijuana. Sorry, that's not my favorite smell in the world. Yeah. I might have some PTSD in regards to that. But so my career trajectory was always very much just investigations, and I wanted to go in that direction and become a detective. So that was the path that I went in. And then so after my temp, got a bit of experience up. I then sort of put in for jobs, and my experience had been in town in the crime department. So then I think it was probably my third panel interview, maybe I got one. And then I got allocated at the crime squad, which was my top choice. So someone was looking down at me and was like, "All right, you can have what you want." And that was I worked with some of the best investigators there. I had some great bosses and some great peers, and especially there weren't a lot of females in that squad. There was typically kind of one per crew. Mm-hmm. There was about 6 or 7 crews. None of the detective sergeants or sergeants were females, so it was just kind of troops on the ground. Mm-hmm. So as a part of the crime squad, we would investigate, obviously, robberies, typically over $10,000 worth, or as part of a series. We would do kidnappings, non-fatal shootings, and aggravated burglaries where there was a significant injury involved. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of on-call work. It was a pretty dynamic work environment. You could go to work and just really not know when you were coming home. Yeah. But I loved it. It was so great investigations, learned so much, and you just had great access to resources in the crime department, which is something that kind of the region, had to go kind of cap in hand to ask for certain things. Yeah. And for us, we just so incredibly fortunately it was just automatically authorized.
Because it is an issue too, right, with some of the either smaller detachments like here in Canada, right, where you don't get anything. If you're not in a major urban center, you're making do. My friend Courtney from the RCMP, I think she was saying they had to figure out how to turn the truck off in the north because the truck wouldn't turn off. And she's like, they're not sending a mechanic up here. So we're YouTubing this as we learn how to do it, or, right?
Exactly.
When you are part of a place where you have all the bells and whistles, you're just like, feeling like I'm balling today.
Exactly. And then I think especially as well because of, so many of our investigations were time sensitive and incredibly dynamic. Like if you're working in a kidnapping, then obviously was someone with their life in, at risk and imminent danger as you were working on that job. So it really needed to, everything you needed to be real quick. Or if, you had the dogs running and we're trying to prevent, a group doing a stick up or something like that. Like, it was, lots of heavy hours, but great job, great experience.
And high media attention too, right? So as the public knows these things are happening, the pressure's on to have immediate results, right? Like, oh, well, this happened. You better know exactly who did it immediately, right? Like with no like real thought from the public as like the level of investigation that takes and the, energy and effort it takes to find those things out, right? So,
I mean,
very
the media back home is maybe a little less intense than sort of other places in different categories. Like, you could use them as a resource. But I remember someone got shot in the street I grew up in. So I was like 200 meters away from my mum's house. Not that I grew up in a dodgy area, but it just seemed to happen that way. And like the media, like the chicks on the scene were just hassling me to do a stand up, and I just kind of kept having to go, oh, look, no. And I could see they were getting a bit like shitty with me, and I just pulled them aside and went, look, I'm at my mum's house where I grew up, 200 meters that way. I'm like, I don't need her neighbors seeing my face on the news and then seeing me at her house and knowing that her daughter's copper. I'm like, that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
So they understood that. So, there was a little bit of give and take in that respect. So it was good.
That's good though. That's good. It's nice to hear that because usually we don't really have the greatest relationship with the press up here. Like they really seek to vilify law enforcement. And then like when there is something good, it's like a tiny little corner article, right? Where like it looks like it was a correction from something they screwed up the last time. It's like, oh, cops bust this. Yay.
There's definitely elements of that I personally never sort of experienced too much of it sort of thing. But it's I mean, obviously, like, I think, Canada's probably pretty similar. Like, we have very different gun laws to what there are in the States. So if there happens to be, like, a police shooting, it is very rare. And even though I worked at the armed crime squad, so there, obviously is access to firearms, it's not the capacity and the frequency like it is in, a place like the United States, and our laws are much different. So, it's a little bit different.
Well, and so, okay, so now we're talking about the States. So without cutting out a whole large part of your journey, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened, but you're now living in the States. So how did that, where you basically, because you did 9 years in Australia, and then you met your husband, and where did you meet him again? I'm sorry, I should.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So it was a little bit of a whirlwind. I was traveling through Europe on a 6-week trip because that's what Aussies do. When we travel, we go far because we're far away from everyone else. And so then I just met him in a random bar in Berlin in Germany. He was there like singing, he's a metalhead, so he was there singing Iron Maiden. And I did not know who Iron Maiden was, so but I know, trust me, I very much do know who they are now. But yeah, so, and we just met and just kind of like hit it off, and I think we hung out that night, and then we saw each other again. I think we put up for dinner like the following night, and then just kept in touch. And that was like in June, and then in September, like just obviously backwards and forwards, like, chatting and corresponding, email, text, whatever. And we kind of, our next date was like a 2-week holiday in Hawaii together. And so that was 3 months after we met. And then 6 months, I came and visited Boston, and he proposed. And then at the 9-month mark, he came to Australia and we got married.
Oh my God! Whirlwind! Whirlwind.
I know. It sounds crazy,
though?
and
I love that. Like I'm such a big like I love, and so that's adorable. I love it. 9 months, bing bang boom. You knew you wanted to be
yeah,
together. You made it happen from
yeah,
literally across the world. That is so
yeah.
amazing. So is your husband American then?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So he's American, but he was just traveling in Germany for Iron Maiden. I love it. If your husband would like to know, I've actually met Bruce Dickinson. Yeah,
Oh,
he
I'll
came
have to pass it on.
like literally this time last year. My rugby club was putting on like a watch party for the Six Nations.
Yeah.
And his tour manager called me in the morning, and I totally thought it was like a prank call. And I was like,
Like
yeah,
a
okay,
pretty cool, yeah.
I'm like, okay, for sure. Bruce Dickinson's in town and wants to come watch rugby with us. Sure. And he was like, no, seriously, like he's here. He's flying out like in the evening. Can he come and watch with your rugby club? And I was like,
Oh
fuck
my God,
yes.
that's amazing.
And he literally showed up at the bar and hung out with us. And he was like the
That's so
nicest.
cool.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
His girlfriend was adorable. Like I gave him
yeah,
bug-eyed cookies. Like it was very surreal, but it was super cool. He was a
yeah,
very, very cool dude. So
yeah.
there's a little story for you.
My hubby's met him a few times. He's met most of like Steve Harris. He's met and a
Yes.
few of them a few times. And they have like a plane that Bruce pilots. Eric, sorry, my husband and his mate have like traveled on that plane with them. And so yeah,
Oh my
they're in deep when it comes to Maiden stuff. So
That's amazing. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
I love it. Okay, cool. Well, so now we all know. Well, now you definitely know who Iron Maiden is.
Exactly.
That's
Well
awesome.
attuned.
So leaving, like to make that
Yeah.
decision to like literally uproot your entire life and move
Yeah.
across the world
Yeah.
and give up your what at the time was basically your dream job. You were loving
Oh,
it.
100%.
So how did that play out? What was your thought? Like, were you thinking you wanted to join the police when you moved to Boston, or what was that kind of?
So yeah, it wasn't a decision I took lightly. After we got married, we did for probably like the first 2 years long distance. Um, and I came here for 6 months, and then I didn't like here to Boston. And I just like kind of took leave from work, and then I went back, and I did some of the I found a volunteer position at a suicide prevention and crisis counseling organisation. So I started doing that when I came over in that first 6 months. And I went back home and spoke to my bosses and just said, like, I gave them 3 months notice of my impending resignation, and they were good about it. And I didn't want to be like a burden, so I actually worked really hard in that last like 3 to 4 month period. And one of my bosses commented, he was like, I've never seen anyone work harder than you after you submitted your resignation. So, because I was very aware I couldn't take on jobs. So if I couldn't take on the job and like be the lead investigator, well, goddamn, I was going to put in like, time and effort and, did all kinds of weird shifts just to cover other people. Like I worked Christmas, I worked New Year's so other people could, be with their families and all that kind of thing. So,
That's awesome.
So it wasn't, I never imagined leaving Big Pole. Like it was just not on my radar, but I also, had sort of difficult, a difficult relationship breakdown a few years beforehand. And it just made me go, I've had what everyone would think I should have had, and that didn't work out. So why not take a chance on this? And who says that it can't? And you know what? If it doesn't work out, well, at least I tried.
Yeah.
At least I tried, and I followed my heart. And you know what? I can always say that, hey, I tried, instead of going, man, I wonder what happened to that like really awesome bloke I met in a bar in Germany. You know what? I married him and I had 2 kids with him. That's what happened. Like,
yes.
So,
yes. Aww. Yeah. That's fantastic. So now you basically went back and forth for 2 years, you said, before you moved?
Yeah, so we got married in the March, and then I came over, a couple of months later for 6 months, and then I went back and then worked for another 3 or 4 months. So I came over and settled in the States in, I think it was like April 2015, I think it must have been, yeah, around then.
Okay.
So then when I settled here, I went back to the suicide prevention and crisis counselling organisation. So I'd always sort of wanted to do something in that field. And it was just so rewarding. And obviously being a cop, you know, you do that job because you want to help people. And so then in that capacity, I was just doing it in just a slightly different role. But I had like done like a little bit of research in regards to like policing over here, and I just would have had to start from square one. Mm-hmm. And after, you know, being in for like 8-9 years, you kind of go, oh, I don't know if I really want to start from square one again. And obviously like my hubby and I wanted to have kids, and I sort of like, I did sort of go through the process of applying for a dispatcher position with like our local one. And then I got offered it, and it just wasn't the right time for us, like family wise, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So I worked for like this Maiden, the suicide prevention place for a couple of years, and then stopped after we had kids and stuff.
Yeah. So you have 2 boys, right?
I do. Yeah.
2 boys.
3-year-old.
I got to see. Did I see the oldest?
No, you saw the youngest.
The youngest. Yeah, he's a sweetheart. He said he was going to eat me. So I love it. He was very cute.
that was the least offensive thing that he could have said to you at the moment. He's right in that real 3-year-old realm, and you never know what's going to pop out of his mouth. So
I love it. You know, and like it doesn't get any better. I thought it would get better as my kids got older. It just gets worse. Like it literally just gets worse. You're just like, God damn it! Like this is supposed to get easier. Who's lying to me? So who's lying to me when they're toddlers? Everybody, because they know that you would give them away if you knew it got worse, right?
I don't know. No, I'm really lucky. Like my husband is a really good guy. He's a good guy. He's a great dad. He's a wonderful husband, and like my kids are just, you know, and everyone's biased, but they're great kids, you know. And I love spending time with them and going crazy with them, and that's what
awesome. You do. Yes, that's awesome. So your husband is with Boston Fire, and how long has he been a firefighter for?
So he's actually not with technically we live in Cambridge.
Oh, okay.
So you can't say that without lifting your nose in the air, because Cambridge is where Harvard is. But
from Cambridge.
Exactly. But yeah, so no, he's been with them for I think over 20 years now.
Wow.
So he's a captain. And then like gets upgraded to deputy sort of pretty frequently. Someone's out or all that kind of thing. So that'll probably be his next trajectory. But I sort of have found that there's a really good level of understanding, and it kind of happened obviously from like when the point that we met, that, you know, I was a cop, he was a firefighter. There's just like a certain level of understanding that you know what it's like to do an intense job, and I guess just, you know, when to pick your moment to like have a chat with them and when not to. So he does 24-hour shifts. When he comes home that following morning, am I going to crack it at him over something, or am I going to have a lot of understanding and compassion and like bring something up at another time? So having that level of understanding, and you know, if he goes to a dangerous job, I'm not automatically going to freak out because I know he's really competent, and you're gonna just like let it play out. So that understanding, that mutual level of understanding, has been something that I think has been really beneficial for our relationship overall.
Well, and I think too, like as you're saying that, right, like for those that are listening who may be spouses of first responders that don't know that or don't have that capacity yet, right? Because it's a learned thing. It's not a natural thing, right? As somebody, because I know my husband would be worried, right? And then inmates would say to me, "Doesn't your husband worried that you're out here with us?" And I was like, well, no, not really, because he knows I'm competent, right? Like he knows that I know what I'm doing, and like, and you know, like as the first responder, you don't really think about that. You're like, well, no, why would he be worried, right? And then so then I would ask him sometimes, like, do you get worried when I go to work? And he's like, not really. He's like, sometimes I get worried when you come home and I can see that something's bugging you or that something happened, but I know that I can see from the look on your face you don't want to talk about it, right? And then it'll be 2 days later that I'll bring it up. And he's like, so, but I think it's very much a learned thing of, you know, what's the timing, or just being there, just physically your presence being there. That person knows that you're supporting and that you know, you care about them, and that rather than, like you're saying, almost kind of badgering at them, like, well, how was your day? Well, what happened? Well, like, because you don't want to talk about it because you just fucking lived it. So you don't want to talk about it. You're like, I'm fucking good. I'm still processing it. Like, stop asking me about my day, right? But that spouse can sometimes take that as, he never wants to talk to me, or, she always shuts down. What's going on? I never know what's happening. And it's like, you just need time sometimes to really.
You need that. You need to decompress. Mm-hmm. And I think as well that and I was listening or reading something the other day, and there's like also like a cultural thing, and I think maybe a little more for like men who are in first responder roles, that they get taught, like, you don't take your shit home. Like, you don't go home and talk to your missus about, having to go and try to resuscitate, like, a dead kid or something. Like, you just, you don't, or they think they can't cope with it, or they won't be able to handle it. And then you're, asking them, and they're not inane questions, but then, pestering them about, like, you left the towel on the ground and you did this and you did that. Like, and I sort of try to, like, just pick my moments. And I actively, and this is just my dynamic with my husband, but I choose not to say much, so that when I bring something up, he's like, okay, I have to listen to this. So whether it's like saying something for like his benefit, or it's something to do with the kids, or something to do with our relationship, or anything like that, I really just focused about like what I addressed him about. And ultimately, like, my thought process is like, okay, is this going to matter? Is this going to matter in an hour? Is this going to matter in a day? Is this going to matter in a week? Like, if I can just breathe out a slight amount of like frustration, because he's been awake for maybe 40 hours and could have worked 36 of that, and he snaps at me and is rude or speaks rudely, or is, something like that. Like, okay, yeah, that might upset or frustrate me, but I probably lean more into the fact that he needs compassion and understanding at that moment, as opposed to me getting antagonistic back. And that's just, that's something that, like, our dynamic.
But I like that though, because it's true. And like, the other side of it is being the spouse that's usually at home when you're married to a first responder, because you have children. Somebody has to watch the children in the middle of the night, right? Like it really, and that's the other dynamic, right? Somebody has to watch the children on Christmas Day when the other person is gone, right? Like, it's not like, and so you're home all day with children, which is a exhausting job, and it's frustrating, and you have no adult people to talk to, right? And so then they come home, and you're like, hello, other adult human being that I would like to talk to. Let's have a conversation. And they're like, I don't want to fucking talk to you because I'm tired. And you're like, I need to talk to somebody that is not telling me about SpongeBob and Bob the Builder. Okay, so you need to listen up, right? But that can cause those issues, right? So like you said, picking your moment, and less is more sometimes, of like, because then when you actually have something you need to say, they understand the importance of like, no, you actually need to give me 5 minutes of uninterrupted time for me to say this, or talk to you, or have this conversation. And then I also need you to freaking remember it, because you're a boy, and apparently it does not stay in your brain when I tell you the child has activity A on Tuesday night, every Tuesday night, but every Tuesday night it is a surprise to you that the child has said activity, right?
Exactly. and I think as well, it's also about mutual respect and appreciation. So I can appreciate that, and I think like any partner of a first responder can appreciate that they go to work, they do a tough job. Some days it's cruisy, some days it's really tough. And then with our relationship, then he also respects and values the fact that I'm at home looking after the kids, and doing all of the things that I do, and having that mutual level of appreciation and respect definitely helps.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome. So let's get into kind of where you are now, and like how this like organically came about, and this decide, I'm going to be a life coach, and I'm going to get certified in it, and I'm going to run with this. So how did that, like, like come about? Because it doesn't, I mean, it does link into what your previous experience is, but it's also a totally like departure from a first responder style career. So talk to me about that.
No, very much so. So I think after I had my youngest, I started thinking, what do I want to do with the rest of my career? Because I'm not someone who I'll get bored. Like I love being at home and looking after my kids, but I also need to feed my brain and challenge myself. And I think I've always sort of been interested in like the psychology counseling realm, but also very aware that is going to take a lot of time to get, qualifications in regards to that. So I started sort of, looking at other opportunities to be able to help out in the meantime. And I think a girlfriend of mine who is a therapist, she was like, have you ever heard of, a life coach? And I'm like, vaguely. So being the previous little detective that I was, I like did a bit of a deep dive, and I love, what I love about coaching is, so first of all, like a coach doesn't give advice. It's all about, being supportive and empowering a person to figure stuff out on, for themselves, but you're there in like a supportive role, and, you can help guide them and help them set goals and all that kind of thing. But it's more about them, what they've got inside of them and what direction they want to go in and all that kind of thing. So I think that I really like that aspect of it. So I got found an organization that was affiliated with the International Coaching Federation, and got my qualifications, so when was that? It was probably about 18 months ago now, I guess. And then sort of probably about halfway through last year, I got to go home back to Australia for the first time in like 3 years since the pandemic.
I guess, yeah,
I know. And then sort of reconnecting like in person with, a lot of my friends back home are first responders, and then obviously a lot of my husband's friends over here are first responders too. Just I kept sort of feeling pulled back to that population, and also sort of vaguely, like I would always just continually hear little bits and pieces about members of my former like police organization like completing suicide. And sort of I just kept feeling that pull back to that sort of first responder realm. So I decided to kind of pivot more in that direction. And I really wanted to focus and just be, a life coach for first responders, emergency services personnel, and their partners, spouses, and loved ones. So obviously that covers the gambit of police, fire, EMS, EMTs, corrections, nurses, paramedics, like anyone in that realm. So like I feel like I have, or I offer like a unique level of understanding, because I have done that job, and I know what it's like to be the partner and spouse of someone who does that job. So like we were just talking about that juggling act and that balancing act of, so I feel like knowing both sides of that coin. And also, we talk about like there's the stigma attached to getting any help if you're a first responder. And the culture of being fairly resistant in that respect. And so from like my thought process is, it being a little less daunting and not as confrontational, to go like, oh, I don't want to go see a therapist, but I might see a coach. And, okay, she used to be a copper, so she's going to get it. And, she's married to a fiery, so she's going to get that. Like, so combining all of those roles and that experience, and also my experience working with at the suicide prevention and crisis counselling organisation. So drawing in all of that, experience, and just sort of like compassion and empathy are, I feel like, my strong point. And having been like a trained investigator, and going through like investigative interviewing, and when you're talking to me, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also looking at your body language, watching your demeanor, listening to the inflection that you put on certain words.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, as what is more interesting is like sometimes it's things that you're not saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so sometimes you can be telling me something, but I can tell that you're dancing around something else.
Yeah.
So,
and you might not even realize you're dancing around something else. That's the other side of it. Yeah.
I think there's like a support gap. So you can, you know, speak to someone who is a colleague or, you know, a peer at work, which is great. And, you know, first responders are wonderful in that aspect. And then there's clinical services. So you're talking, you know, therapy and all that kind of side of it. Whereas there's something in the middle that, like, if you're not at that stage where you are suffering from a mental illness and need to see a clinician, that you maybe don't want to talk to a spouse and you don't want to talk to one of your mates at work because you're just like, I don't want to appear vulnerable, I don't want to appear weak. I'm trying to fill that gap that's inside of that, to give them an option of someone to talk to who's going to get it. And ultimately, like, I'm here to help. And I as well, like, I think probably one of the main things about coaching too is that coaching is actually client led. So first responders, they're used to being in control and being in command, and so them actually coming to talk to me, where they get to talk, I get to listen, they get to spit anything out. If they need to talk about a critical incident or something somewhat, you know, traumatic that they've experienced, they know that I can cope and I can handle it, and like they don't have to keep anything away or shy away from it. And then as someone who's in control, they get to choose what they talk about, they get to choose what they want to focus on, they get to choose what goals they want to work towards. So allowing someone who's used to being in control that amount of like control and focus in terms of helping themselves, it's kind of, I guess it's like almost like a sneaky way of letting them help themselves without letting them get in their own way.
No, and you brought up so many good things, because I think the first thing is it's coming from somebody who's been there, because the number one thing that I hear from majority of first responder friends, things like that, is you go to the psychologist, you utilize your employee wellness or assistance or whatever, you know, program, either voluntarily because you realize something's fucked up and you need help, or you're forced to because there was an incident and you've been flagged as you need to go see somebody, right? Whether you want to or not.
Exactly.
And so they say, you know, they get there and you're talking to a psychologist. Well, the first 3 sessions, and you only get 5, is you explaining what you do, and you see their eyes get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're like, and you're using slang, and you're, you know, and you're talking, and then you explain. So it's like story time for the psychologist, and you're like, I'm literally getting fucking nothing from this, and we've wasted 3 sessions and I only got 5, right? And so for me, I think it's huge to have somebody that has been in the role, and not a fly by night, not I was caught for 6 months. No, you were caught for 9 years, right? Like you see shit in 9 years, right? And so to be able to say and to understand the slang and to understand the culture and the, you know, the shift work, what shift work does to you, and, you know, the camaraderie and sometimes ratness of colleagues that are pieces of shit that you have to work with, right? And like, so sometimes all of that 100%. Stuff too, right? And then like you're saying, I really liked how you said that, failure resistant. So failure resistant, like, hi, could you sum up first responders in any greater way? Are we failure resistant? 1000%, right? We all are. And usually in all aspects of our lives, right? We are failure resistant for sports, for relations, you know, like we will do anything we can to make it work because that's what you have to do at work, right? And so of course you're going to do anything you can to stay, you know, not having to go and talk to somebody, because that means you're a failure and that means you're weak, right? And so it being client led, and you basically are tricked into being like, look at me healing myself without even knowing about it. God damn, I'm good, right?
Well, and there's such great power, because then it's like you own your own success. It's not, and coaches aren't obviously therapists. So we don't delve into, you know, your childhood and whatever issues you might have going on there. Like we focus on the present and we work towards the future. And I sort of just try to see myself as like a conduit between the life that you have and the life that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And you are taking those active steps, and I support you and empower you and encourage you and keep you accountable, but ultimately it's still on you.
Yeah.
And and like that cultural thing, like I was talking to a girlfriend the other day, and it's so I was a cop, oh god, how many years ago now, but there used to be this thing in VicPol, and it was about you need a can of concrete. And I'd be like, what? Oh, so you can harden the fuck up. And there was actually like cans around every police station with like harden the fuck up with like police ribbon and stuff, And at the time, I thought it was like hilarious too. But you step back and take a think, and it's like, well, that's actually diminishing. It's diminishing if someone is struggling after a critical incident or has, and I mean, I 100% attended difficult jobs. I attended, really traumatizing like suicides where, you were either you discover the person or trying to rescue them, and it's awful. And then having that old school attitude of like, oh, you just need to, can of concrete, harden the fuck up. Like, no, you need to be supported. And then if you have struggled, well, then you need help.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be okay. And there should never be any stigma attached to it. And that's like the brick wall that I am ramming my head and my heart and like everything through. And I mean, these days it is so much better. There is so much more education out there and about, behavioral health and wellness and so much better than it ever used to be. But I am just trying to be a part of that. And, down the road, like I just signed up to start, some counselling and psychology courses. So my long-term plan is to be a counsellor specifically for first responders, suffering from trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the way that I want to help now. And this is what I can do in my capacity. And there's so much power in feeling heard and listened to. And literally just having someone sit there and listen to you talk. Like, when do we get that? When do we feel ever really, truly, truly heard and truly listened to and truly understood? It's so rare without someone like whipping their phone out and not giving you all of, their focused attention. And, it's like a thing that I sort of like had on one of my business cards or something like that. I was like, let me listen in a way you've never been heard.
I love that. But because when you're saying that, like one of my best friends, she's not a first responder, but she reached out and she's like, I think I'm going to start going to therapy. And I was like, awesome. And she was like,
yeah,
really? And I was like, yeah, why would I not say that? Right. And she's like, well, I don't really have anything wrong. And I was like, well, I don't think you need to have anything wrong in quotation marks, right? To go talk to somebody. And so she's like, okay. I said, well, let me know how it goes. She went to her first session. She came home. She called me and she's like, oh my God, Nikki. She's like, it was amazing. And I was like, okay, like, what did you guys talk about if you want to share? And she's like, it nothing. She's like, but he just listened. I just talked for an hour and he just listened and nobody interrupted me and nobody like you said, whipped their phone out or looked away or looked bored or cut in with their own story. Right. And she's like, she goes, I'm just going to go just because somebody will listen to me for an hour. Like I will just pay. And I was like, but like you said, it's like a lost art. And I used to teach actually a communications course. Part of it was, when you're listening to somebody, don't just be waiting to talk because that's what we do. Right. You're listening and you're like, oh, I have the answer to that. Or, oh, I have a story that matches that. Or, right. And it really is. It's a learned thing to learn how to
it really is
listen. Right. So but like you're saying, I think that's amazing the way you're kind of, like you said, bridging that gap and being that middle ground of the person that, maybe it's not your coworker that you want to talk to because they have their own shit too. And that's the other thing, right? You don't want to burden your other coworkers or they're also dealing with that fucking scenario that you just came out of. And so you don't want to bug them.
They definitely can be.
And you don't feel like there's enough wrong with you to go clinical, right? but you want to have somebody to talk to. I think that what you're doing is an amazing.
Thank you. And it's even as well, like, you know, you and I both attend the same job. You might cope fine, and I might be really affected by it. And there are so many, reasons as to why one is affected and one isn't. You know, it can just be like the straw that broke the camel's back, or, you know, and so I think as well, like if you attend a critical incident and then everyone else is fine and you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm really struggling with this. If they seem fine, you're like, well, I don't want to seem like, you know, I can't cope. And there's and I guess there's why I want to be in that first responder realm. Like there's this like Brene Brown quote that I love. It was like from her book, like The Gift of Imperfection. If you don't mind, it's very short, but it basically like sizes up, you know, what it is that I want to do. And it says, only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. And I think having been on this coaching journey, I know my own darkness. I know what I've gone through. I know what I've traversed in my life and have come out on the other side of it. So I feel like I know my own darkness, so then I can comfortably sit in the space of other people's and let them offload it onto me. And so like my sort of, I don't know, little sentence that I like, choose to use is like, I will hold space for your darkness, because you've got to get light on it to let it go. And that's what I love about that. And that's what I'm just, and you know, I'm an Aussie. We're like pretty open and laid back, and you know, nothing much bothers me. Like my husband, I think, married me because I bring his uptight Boston like neurotic level down. But you know, so I think holding space and being able to cope, and it's not, you know, something that, you know, I'm going to be touched and I'm going to be empathetic and be able to understand and offer compassion. But I have, you know, being able to disassociate myself and go, okay, like I can listen to you without let it affect me. And I think that's what they need. And then I already understand the job. So I'm not sitting there going, oh, can you explain this and can you explain that, and what does this mean and what does that mean? So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is the space I'm in, and all I want to do is help. And that's you know, there's multiple capacities over the next, you know, 30 years that I want to work on, but this is where I'm at now, and it's something I feel really passionately about. You know, I'm married to a first responder. You know, the godparent of one of my children is a first responder. You know, most of my friends back Cruma, like this is the population that not only do I want to help it, I'm a part of it. You know, so it's what I live, it's what I breathe, and it's important to me.
Well, and I think you summed it up perfectly, right? It's a blue line family. And it isn't necessarily always blue, right? It's red, it's white, it's whatever, blue, right? Red, like, you know, but once you're part of the family, you're part of the family. And so I love to hear that. I think that's awesome. I'm cognizant of time, just because I know I've kind of taken your time, and you're busy. No, you're good. Busy, but I just kind of want to touch on, so if you could, you know, is there I wouldn't say a simple strategy, because I feel like we try and, you know, 10 quick tips to reduce your mental stress, right? Like, but is there something that you can share with our listeners about, you know, like potentially a strategy or something that they could utilize to either reframe a thought process or do something that would assist them in between them being able to reach out to you or go seek clinical help or speak to a staff or, you know, like a coworker?
I mean, I think the most important thing to do is to acknowledge it, is to accept however you're feeling, is to acknowledge it. Because when you try to deny it and hide it away, it's gonna fester and it's gonna get worse. So acknowledge it. Say, I feel shit, I feel depressed, I'm anxious, I'm having nightmares, or like whatever it is that you're experiencing. And don't be afraid of it, because most of the time it's a normal, natural human response to seeing something horrific at work, or going through relationship troubles, experiencing loss and grief, of like the breakdown of a relationship or anything at work. So acknowledging it, first of all, because then you take its power away over you. And then it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter whether it's me, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a crisis line. Like, talk to someone, because you're not the first responder to have a difficult time, and you won't be the last. And as someone, which I know I shared with you throughout our communication, like, I lost, one of my parents to suicide when I was 2. So I know what it's like to grow up with that loss. And I've obviously attended suicide and attended suicides and stuff throughout the course of my duties, and spoken to them, on the phone. I know what it's like, and a split second choice and split second decision when you are struggling. You're not thinking rationally. So the sun's still going to come up tomorrow. Talk to someone, get some help, and learn positive coping strategies.
I love it. That's amazing. It's such good. I mean, it is. It seems common sense. It seems common sense, right? But when you're in the darkness, and like you said, I mean, the Brene Brown, I love that quote, but when you're in the darkness, you just see darkness. You don't see any light. All you see is that box that you're in. And so I think, like you're saying, just even acknowledging that you're in the fucking box is a step, right? That holy fuck, like, something is not right. Like, I really am in a box, and I really need to start figuring out what I need to do, right? So I think that's awesome. So are you accepting clients? Like, would you do distance? Like, because we're in Canada, and as much as I would love to come to Boston, because I really want to, my husband is a diehard Bruins fan, and so it's a goal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a goal to get there at some point. But are you doing distance coaching and clients and things like that?
Yeah, I do offer that. So happy to do like virtual appointments, and it's easy, I mean, someone I coach at the moment is in like Missouri, there's like people from all over, and I offer my services, back home to Australians too. So I'm managing all kinds of different time zones. So I'm adept at making things like that work. So yeah, very much so.
That's awesome. Well, we will be popping your information in the show notes. So anybody that is interested in getting hold of Erin, all that info will be in there. I mean, I think this has been fantastic. I have loved talking to you, not only just because I get to hear your amazing accent and like, I can't say no, and so I can't do it. It's terrible. It's a fucking terrible imitation, but I love it.
I'll start ripping out my belt, and we can trade.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with one quick rapid fire question for you. And I'm going to make you go back to your days on the police squad. And because it's in Australia, what was the favorite snack or food to eat on shift when you were a police officer?
Well, you're a fitness guru, so you're probably going to shun me on this one, but I was a smoker back in my policing days. So honestly, it was a cup of tea and a dart or a cigarette. So that was just what used to, get you through. And I used to work night shift, and there was a whole crew of us who we did night shift together, and we were all smokers, and we'd all meet up in this park. And there was about 5 or 6 different police cars. We were all sitting there having a dart, and we'd be like, just always like, be like, safest park in Victoria. So that's my dirty secret snack, if I'm honest with you.
That is like, you could not get more Australian, like, legitimately than that. A cup of tea and a dap.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I love it.
At least I'm honest, Nikki. At least I'm honest.
Yeah, you're totally honest. And at least it's not Vegemite. If you were gonna say Vegemite, I was gonna vomit in my mouth a little bit because
I'm an anomaly amongst Australians, and I don't like Vegemite. So I know. You're
Vegemite and
safe when
Marmite,
it comes
like,
to me with that.
what is with that Vegemite and Marmite? Like, oh, I lived in Wales for a year, and my flatmates used to gobble it. And I
Yeah,
was like, the smell of it
it's,
in the morning. You're hungover because you're in university, so you
it's an
drink all the
acquired
time.
taste.
Oh,
I mean, I think it originated in like wartime. I'm like, yeah, they used to put like cigarettes in people's rations too, and who stopped that? So.
Oh my gosh. Well, Erin, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for reaching out and chatting with me and having this awesome conversation and sharing all of the amazing like things you're doing and the way that you're doing the work and the space that you're holding for people. I think it's awesome. I'm just so honored to be able to
Thank
talk
you,
to you.
Nikki.
So
No,
I hope
it's been really lovely.
I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Go have fun with those little babies. Tell your husband that I love Iron Maiden as well. And when I come to Boston, when I come to Boston, I'm going to come find you, and then we're going to hang out.
Yes,
okay?
you should. 100%. Love it,
Okay.
Nikki.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers, you too.
Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.